Hello everyone and welcome to another video on the Toliss Airbus A321, and today we're going to look at rejected landings, or baulked landings is another way to refer to them, where we go around somewhere in the vicinity of the runway, usually after the missed approach point. So if that was a normal ILS, it would be somewhere after your minima, around 200 feet, something like that. Essentially, instead of just being able to do the standard go-around procedure, which we talked about in another video, I'll provide the link for it. It's a slightly different procedure where we are near the runway. So let's get started. So here we are on approach to 9 left at Heathrow, a bit of a blustery day, and that would be typical conditions where you might think about a baulked landing, so where you could get blown around. Why might you do one? Well, if you're going to go past the end of the touchdown zone, which is the lit zone here on the runway, or if you're looking like it's unstable for some other reason, it could be that you're just too high over the threshold or you're too low or anything like that. Maybe you're going sideways in the crosswind. So what do we do? Well, it's the same procedure. We'll make the same call. So the call would be go around flaps, but we don't actually move the flaps until the airplane is got positive energy and we're climbing away. And once we've done that, we can move them up and then go positive climb, gear up, and so on. So I'm going to disconnect the autopilot now, and we'll have a look at what it might look like. I'll bring the PFD up for you. So we can continue to go around any time until the reversers are out. So let's say we don't like the view from here. So I'm going to go to toga. I'm going to call go around. Flaps, man toga, SOS, go around track is in. We've got positive energy, so the flaps can go in one stage, so they go to 3. And now we've got positive climb, so we can get the gear up. And away we go. After a few seconds, we can get the autopilot in, no problem. And now we're into our standard go around. So we'll climb like this up until our acceleration altitude, which will come at about 1500 feet for the go around here. So very straightforward. It's the same sort of procedure at start. Now, once the nose comes down, we'll start bringing the flaps in. So let's have a look at some other examples. So here's a replay of that landing from the passenger view, and we've got the PFD in the bottom left, obviously. So some things to talk about with the rejected landing. If you go around from the flare point, so before you've touched down, then realistically the airplane should have the energy in it to carry on, but you may touch the runway, which is completely fine, as we do in this example. As long as you keep the energy in the airplane and you have the thrust levers and you do a normal sort of rotation up, then that will be fine, as long as the main wheels will touch down first. Also, when we go around, we expect the VAP to become the target speed. I don't know why, but the Toliss eventually shifts that speed up in the 160 knots, and I wouldn't expect that in real life. I don't know why it does that. I have asked, but I don't have an answer for that yet. But the result is pretty similar for this rejected landing phase. Initially, you're just getting that rotation going, get the airplane away from the ground. Once the reversers are out, we are committed to landing. So until you've selected reverse, you can go around, but we'll look in the next video about what happens if we go around from later. So here we go, going around from the flare. Bit of a touchdown there, but it's fine. The spoilers stay down because the thrust levers are now at toga. And it's just about gentle rotation back up towards SRS. But you see here, I would expect that speed to be down in the 140 area like it was on the approach, not shoot to 170, that's too fast. And up we go. The airplane has plenty of energy. Once the toga spools up, it does take a little bit of time to spool up, so you don't want to overly aggressively pitch up. So let's have a look at another example. So here we are at 500 feet on a slightly wonky approach. The breeze seems to have called out the autopilot just there. And this time we're going to look at what would happen if we went around from after touchdown. So that's totally fine. It's possible as long as we haven't selected reverse. But what we're going to do is go to toga. We're going to make the same call, go around flaps. But again, we will not retract the flaps until we have that positive energy and we are climbing away, or at least getting away from the ground. As a result of that, we may hear the config warning. It will give us a big ding, 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 because the Airbus thinks we're trying to take off with full flap, which we can't do. But that's fine. It's just something that could happen. So let's have a look at how that works. Also, our speed could wash off. So it could be well below our 140. So in the real airplane, because this speed bug would stay around here, pilot monitoring would have to call out a rotate call perhaps. So I'm going to remember that about 145 knots, I know it's okay to rotate, because you may have lost some energy. So let's have a go. Autopilot's off. A bit late, but there we go. That's fine. And let's say we get it completely wrong. So we go into our flare. And we're too high, and I idle the thrust levers. Still too high, still too high. Touchdown. We're past the touchdown zone. Okay, I'm going to go to toga, man toga, SRS, go around track. But we see the speed is down at 120, which is no good. So we don't want to rotate yet. So I'm going to keep it here, 140 knots. Okay, now we can rotate. We get that config warning, but that's fine. Okay, we're climbing away, flaps into 3, positive climb, gear up, and now follow the SRS. And here we are. Gentle rotation, absolutely fine. Making sure you don't strike the tail by being too low energy. So if we just immediately tried to rotate at 120 or 110 knots or whatever it may be, you could get yourself into problems. The airplane just wouldn't have the energy to unstick from the runway. So let's have another look at that. Okay, so here we are again on that final. And yeah, we just extend the flare past the touchdown zone by accident. It can happen. It could be wind would be a classic pilot excuse, but there's all sorts of reasons you could end up. But if it happens, no problem. We'll just go around. So we've touched down, but it's no good. Thrust levers to toga. The spoilers come down. We're rolling along. Energy's not there yet, so we keep it down. And then we reach our 140 knots, and we can rotate. Making sure you keep that rotation coming up as we head up into the sky. Something to note in the real airplane, it's quite common to feel a sense of so much G that you think you've pitched up higher than you have, and it's possible to end up leaving the nose too low. So you have to keep that pitch up to the flight directors and get yourself climbing away safely. Okay, this time I want to look at a bounced landing. So that would be if we touch down and we are back in the air. If you're just a couple of feet in the air, it's not a problem. You can just hold the pitch attitude. It's important you don't do anything too clever, but if the bounce is going to take you outside of the touchdown zone, then you do need to go around, because the second touchdown is the one that we're counting really. But if the bounce is more than a couple of feet, or if you're not sure, then it's a case of having to do a rejected landing from the bounce position. It's exactly as we did earlier. So toga, hold the pitch, and maybe you can start a rotation depending where the energy is. But importantly, don't put the nose down to try and land, because then you'll have a heavy landing. And don't keep pulling up to avoid a touchdown, because if you touch down from the bounce in toga thrust with the pitch in a normal landing attitude, then you'll be fine. But what you don't want to do is keep pulling back to avoid that touchdown, because then you could have a tail strike. So let's have a look. A little bit difficult. I'm going to make my excuses now to do a bounce on purpose. They sometimes happen. They can be from the wind. Typically, it would be like this. So you're coming down too fast. You're going to be a heavy landing. Then you flare. And you keep flaring. And now we're back up in the air. And you see here, a bit too high. So I go around. So man toga, SRS, go around track. I'm just going to hold it here. And we get that config warning. Now I've got to keep the nose from rising, because it's trying to pitch up on me with the spoilers and so on. And now we get the positive energy, flaps can come in, positive climb, gear up, pitch up properly to the SRS. And now after that mess, I would put in the autopilot. So as you saw, it was important not to let the airplane raise the nose on you. As I said earlier, by not being in normal law, we have these pitch power couples, that sort of thing. So I actually had to put the side stick forwards to stop the nose from rising with the spoilers. So let's have another look at that. So here we are on that approach again in a replay, about 100 feet. So I'll just let it play. And here we have the side stick moving. It's slightly out of sync, so the numbers don't quite add up, but it's pretty close. So we're into the flare, usual sort of flare, and now we're in the air again. We bounced, we can see 5 feet radio altimeter, so we decide to go around, so we go to toga. And now the thrust is starting to spool up. We can see the engines, and as they kick in, we get a big pitch up, and then I have to put forward on the side stick to make sure the nose doesn't rise. And now we get climbing away, positive energy, the flaps can go to 3, and then the gear can come up as we get positive climb and into our normal go around. So something slightly different there for the bounce. You don't need to try and save a bounce landing. It's not a very nice situation to be in, so going around will be the safest option out of it. But like I said, if it's just a foot or two, it could be possible to just hold the pitch and let it land again, as long as that's inside the touchdown zone. And now we'll just have another look from the outside replay for this. It's quite an interesting one. It's quite nice to have all these tools to see it, because in the real simulators we don't get the chance to mess around for this long with it. So this is the exact same landing from the outside view, and we'll have a look. You'll remember that our pitch attitude got towards 7.5 degrees, and you'll see how close that brings the tail. I'd also say if I just held that, it was probably acceptable to continue this landing. We'd have finished in the touchdown zone. Not too bad. But anyway, here we go. So the thrust levers are coming to toga, and it starts to pitch up 7.5 degrees, and you see that tail getting lower. But by holding it there, we get airborne, energy comes in, now the flaps can move to 3, positive climb, gear comes up. So that's it for today. A couple of slightly different style go-arounds basically from that last moment, and hopefully that gives you some idea as to what we might do with the real airplane. So there are more considerations to be had out of landing and going around from very late in the process, but it's nothing to be afraid of. It's an option that you absolutely have, like I say, up until you have selected reverse thrust. As long as you haven't, you can go to Toga and get yourself safely away from the ground. And it's all about making sure that the airplane has the energy to climb away, and that you don't try and do anything silly like try and hold the nose up and strike the tail, or hold the nose down once you're going around and end up overspeeding the flaps. So it's just a balance of the things. This is a sort of flying maneuver where pilot monitoring is very important. Like I said, calling out that rotation speed when you're on the ground to make sure, also calling out when you're reaching 7.5 degrees, as we saw in that last video, making sure you don't strike the tail. So this is why there's still 2 pilots really for this sort of thing. That's it for today. Thank you very much for watching, and see you again in another video soon.